Hello YouTube and hello 9th Age communities. This is Alex with Evershade Gaming, here to bring you another battle report. Today we've got a 4,500 point game using the 2.0 version of the rules, with my beast herds and my friend Mike's demon legions. For my army here, you can see I've got a Minotaur Warlord General with paired weapons, Agger's Affliction, Blessed Inscriptions, and a Potion of Swiftness. I've got a Minotaur Chieftain BSB, he's Greater Totem Bear with a 2-up armor save with Willow's War and the Basalt Infusion, a little bit of a ward save against some flaming, and then the Talisman of the Void for an extra channel there. I've got a Druidism Adept with the Sea of the Dark Forest, just because it's recently become one of my favorite items. Then we've got a Adept of Evocation with the Dark Rain to round out the character slot there. After that, we've got a horde of mongrels in core, 50 of them with spears, full command, and the Banner of the Wild Herd for that one turn of +1 strength and AP. Then we've got a unit of Mongol Raiders to act as a bunker for my 2 wizards. I've got a unit of Raiding Chariots here, and then in the special, I've got 2 units of Gargoyles, a unit of 8 Minotaurs with shields, full command, the Blackwing Totem, and the Banner of Speed. And then I've got a Razor Tusk Chariot, a Razor Tusk herd of 6 models, and then a single pig to round out the rest of the list there. Unfortunately, I was not able to obtain a copy of my opponent's list before I made this battle report, so I just approximated it the best I could, though it is almost definitely not accurate, mostly because I couldn't come to a point total under 4,500, so I definitely got something wrong. In his character slot, he just has the one. It's a Sentinel of Nakuja, with the Dominion of Sloth, of course, and riding a Throne of the Oracle, taking Witchcraft. In core, he has 15 Lemures with full command and stiff upper lip. That's almost definitely where his caster's going. He's got a unit of 15 Myrmidons with a whip-cracked tail and a musician, and then a unit of 15 Succubi with a musician and the mesmerizing plumage. Then in Aves he just has 3 Bloatflies, and in special he first has 2 Blazing Glories with fly and cloven hooves, a unit of 3 Brazen Beasts with the incendiary Ichor for those flaming attacks, and then a unit of 3 Clawed Fiends and 2 Engine of Damnation Hope Harvesters. We played on map number 12, and we played the Counter Thrust Deployment. And then we also played the Secure Target Objective. If you'd like to see any further details on those items I just passed over, feel free to pause the video on those moments there. Here's a picture of my spells. May not be the easiest to read there. You can see I've got all of my totems, as well as Whispers of the Veil and Hasten the Hour from Evocation, my Oaken Throne, of course, and then Healing Waters and Summer Growth from Druidism. So unfortunately, I lost the pictures I had taken of the initial deployment as well as the empty board, so you could see the setup of the terrain there. So I'm just going to use this picture from turn 1 as a reference here. It's pretty clear of how my opponent deployed, other than the fact there's a unit of 3 Clawed Fiends off on the right there beyond where you see the Myrmidons, and you can barely see the Brazen Beasts up there on the top left. As far as deployment goes, you can see I deployed my Minotaurs far left with the Razor Tusk Chariot next to them, a unit of 6 Razor Tusks next to that, the Gargoyles in front with the Mongrels close behind, my bunker hiding behind that impassable terrain in case my opponent plopped for some turn 1 shooting, and then I've got that unit of 3 Chariots on the right there. I also had that pig who just really shot up there in turn 1. And then for my opponent's deployment, like I said, he has those Brazen Beasts on the far left, followed by a Hope Harvester. He's got one of his Blazing Glories there next to it. On the other side of that, he's got his General in the unit of Lemures, and then the unit of 3 Flies. Behind that is the Sirens. Next to that, another Hope Harvester with another Blazing Glory behind it. In the unit of Myrmidons, and like I said, 3 Clawed Fiends off on the right, off the edge of this photo here. And in turn 1, I guess we can just go right into it. You can see I just really plowed forward with almost everybody on the left flank, moving up as far as I possibly could, getting into my forest there to dissuade any possible charges you might be thinking about in case you might want to try and stay steadfast with that Lemure unit if he tries to go for a long bomb or something. And then just using the Gargoyles on top to chaff up the Hope Harvester, and then the pig also shooting forward just to be really annoying and try and draw some of the threats that are on the flanks closer to the center where the Minotaurs and the Mongrels will be able to start to deal with them, and the Razor Tusk herd as well. So going into the magic phase here, I pulled the 3 card and managed to save 1 token left over, and the only spell that I got off this phase of any consequence was Whispers of the Veil here on the side. Everything else he either dispelled or didn't do anything. And I didn't have any combat to do, and of course no shooting, so we just went on into his turn 1. Looks like he just moved up pretty aggressively on the right flank there, didn't do any charging. And then again on the left, kind of closing in a pincer. He's got my Minotaur unit flanked pretty darn well with that Blazing Glory and the Brazen Beasts. And then he actually moved back with that one Hope Harvester while remaining in short range with his gun. Then we've got, just everyone else just moving up. That Hope Harvester moving in to shoot the pig probably, and the Myrmidons moving on to the objective, keeping the Clawed Fiends at a healthy distance for an easy charge on those chariots if I don't back up. In his magic phase he pulled the 4 card there with the 5 dice and 7 tokens. Don't think he saved any. And the only spell he got off was the big bewitching glare onto the gargoyles here, so we could get battle focus with his volley gun shot there. Yep. And then into the shooting phase. Looks like he annihilated those gargoyles with his Hope Harvester there. That battle focus probably really came in handy. And then he ended up doing 2 wounds to the pig there with the other Hope Harvester. Not quite clearing it out. So, going into my turn 2 here, we can see that things have already started to go wrong. I had tried to charge the sirens with the gargoyles just to get them out of the way so that the pigs could then charge. And I wanted to get into those flies and just get them taken care of with my high quantity strength 6 attacks in the pig unit. However, none of the charges were successful, and we just kind of nudged forward, so everyone else on the field just kind of had to deal with it. I'd forgotten to mention in the previous turn that the Blazing Glory had gotten raven-winged and had moved closer, farther over in the flank, so that the Minotaurs were now completely outmaneuvered, and so now I had to make this quicker form to go and look at them. The mongrels moved up. You can see the chariots have had to move backward as the Clawed Fiends are threatening them on the right side, though you can't really see them. They're off the frame there. But yeah, things have gone wrong here in the movement phase, and going into the magic phase, I pulled the number 2 card and was able to save 1 token afterward. And unfortunately, the only spell I got off was Whispers of the Veil with 4 6s on 5 dice after failing a couple spells earlier in the turn. And yeah, so my evocation wizard is dead. But at least I got Whispers off on these flies. And here's just a cool pick going into my opponent's turn too. So at the start of his turn, he went ahead and definitely outmaneuvered me even farther with that Blazing Glory, kind of zoning me with those Brazen Beasts, and probably just keeping his distance with the Hope Harvester, trying not to get charged by the Minotaurs. Here we can see the Bloat Flies. I remember this now. He had charged the gargoyles, who fled through both the pigs and the mongrels. The pigs stayed, the mongrels clearly did not, and then the mongrels fled over the gargoyles, landing in that position there. So I'm really hoping they're going to make their rally test next turn, because I really need all the scoring I can get at this point. And then you can see he just kind of moved even farther on the right flank, cementing his position with those Myrmidons on top of the objective, moving even closer with those Clawed Fiends to box in my chariots. I'm kind of in a weird position here. I have to find an opportunity to break out here. Going into his magic phase, he pulled the 7 card there, saved a couple tokens, and looks like he got a few spells off here. I believe he Ravens winged something, and I know he got some damage onto the Minotaurs, I believe, and got some debuffs for movement. You can see he debuffed the movement using the attribute of some witchcraft spells that he must have gotten off. And in the shooting phase, you can see that the Hope Harvesters successfully took off a couple of Minotaurs with their shooting, and then also finally killed that Razor Tusk that was chaffing up the other Hope Harvester. And here's just a picture of the board state as we head right here into turn 3. So you can see that I made a charge with all of my chariots, the Razor Tusk and the Raiding Chariots, into the Bloat Flies, thankfully. And I got a nice long charge with the Razor Tusk unit into the Lemures. Really stoked about that. Unfortunately, the Minotaurs didn't have anyone to charge at this point, and they were so debuffed that they could only march like 10 inches, even with the better speed I have in that unit. The gargoyles and the mongrels thankfully rallied. I was really happy about that. And you can see I just kind of inched forward with the druid and his bunker unit, just because I didn't want to stay too close in case the combat with the chariots and the bloatflies went awry. And then going into the magic phase, I didn't take a picture of the card, but I did just get summer growth off. That's all that really mattered, and got a minotaur back. And then after combat, you can see the combat with the flies went pretty well, actually. We got them all down, and unfortunately we took like 9 wounds in the raiding chariots, so we've just got the one guy left there, and then 4 wounds in the razor tusk chariot. Do not underestimate those flies. Those toxic attacks are nuts. And then in the combat with the lemures, the razor tusks did a substantial amount of damage, but the razor tusks only suffered 1 wound in response. The lemures did stick around though, so I'm worried about how the sirens and that blazing glory are going to react next turn. And speaking of, here's his turn 3. You can see that the blazing glory there on the left charged the gargoyles, who then fled over a couple units. Thankfully everyone stuck around, pretty thankful about that. And you can see the brazen beasts and the hope harvester just kind of moved up closer to the minotaurs to threaten them more. You can see the other blazing glory got into the flank of the razor tusks, and the sirens moved closer to retaliate to the chariots. And the unit of clawed fiends on the right charged into the flank of the last remaining raiding chariot, while the myrmidons just kind of squeeze around. In his magic phase he pulled the 1 card, and the only spell he got off was Bewitching Glare onto the pigs, so that Blazing Glory and those lemures and his general are going to have battle focus when they're fighting the pigs. In the shooting phase, you can see he killed another minotaur with the Hope Harvester's shooting attack, and the other Hope Harvester killed the Razor Tusk Chariot, just plucked off that last wound there. In combat, the Clawed Fiends had no problem running over that last raiding chariot, and tried to overrun into the pigs to join in that combat, but unfortunately didn't go far enough. In the Lemure combat, I actually really lucked out here. He whiffed hardcore with his Blazing Glory, and I was monstrous with the Razor Tusks. I was stomping, I was hitting, I was wounding. Look, he's only got 3 models left. It wasn't even steadfast, but thankfully didn't lose too many models, and this is what we were left with after combat here. And here's just a broad overview shot of what the table looks like here at the end of turn 3. Going into turn 4 here, we can see that as far as charges go, the Minotaurs had attempted to charge the flank of those Clawed Fiends. What normally would have been like a 7-inch charge became a 9 because of the double debuff from the Evil Eye that he had cast in the previous turn. So unfortunately I failed that charge, and now I'm stuck in a death trap between those brazen beasts and the Hope Harvester. On the left flank, the mongrels have spun to face the Blazing Glory that's trying to sneak up on them there, and then the gargoyles on the other side of the mongrels have rallied this turn, which is good. But that's really all I had for movement. Going into the magic phase, I pulled the number 1 card, unfortunately, and I was only able to get 1 spell off, which was Summer Growth onto the pigs, which was sorely needed. But unfortunately I cast it with 3 6s on 5 dice, and now my other caster has exploded. And so, yeah, I guess I'm just down to totems now. In combat, unfortunately, the pigs got run over, so the Summer Growth was in vain. The Blazing Glory and the Lemures pursued into the building there, and they just kind of bumped off, which would be kind of weird, but since it's going to be his next turn anyway, he doesn't really mind. And speaking of, here's his turn 4. As far as charges go, he got the Hope Harvester and the Brazen Beasts into the Minotaurs, as expected, and it looks like he did not charge, but he just parked the Blazing Glory in front of the mongrels. I'm not sure, maybe so that they didn't get the extra AP or something. But yeah, he just kind of parked there and boxed me, and he did not charge this turn. And you can see the Hope Harvester move down as well, and then that last Lemure just kind of hid behind the building, because he doesn't want me picking up those points. For Magic, he pulled the number 2 card, and the only spell I remember being of any real significance was the wheel turns on my Minotaurs, so they're going to have an even tougher time fighting back against those Brazen Beasts. And in combat here, you can see things went about as well as can be expected. I lost 3/4 of the Minotaur unit, but really thankfully they were steadfast, since I got a couple attacks back against those Brazen Beasts and were able to take away their 1 rank. So I was steadfast there, but I couldn't turn around since I was engaged on 2 fronts. So we'll see if the Minotaur Warlord can turn this fight around next time. Going into turn 5 here, we can see that the mongrels have charged that Blazing Glory, that the Minotaurs are still tied up in the center there, that my gargoyles have flown over to chaff up the Hope Harvester and keep it from running over to contribute to that mongrel combat, and that the other unit of mongrels is just hiding behind that rock. I pulled the number 7 card for Magic, and somehow I was able to get the Blooded Horn Totem off, so that should help me out in combat, I hope. Going into combat here, you can see I really put the hurt on that Blazing Glory. I dealt 1 wound to it, I believe, and then he only dealt 4 to me, so with the charge, the standard, and the 3 ranks, I got 3 wounds total on him after he rolled for his discipline check after losing combat there. Over here, the last of the Minotaurs were taken down by the Brazen Beasts, but thankfully the Warlord made short work of them, and then we just focused on the other Hope Harvester for the rest of this turn. My opponent's turn 5, you can see that second Blazing Glory charged the flank of the Mongrels. You can see that the other Hope Harvester did not charge the Gargoyles and is probably just going to shoot him instead, and then everyone else just kind of shuffled around. In the magic phase, he pulled the number 8 card, and the only really significant spell was Bewitching Glare on the Gargoyles, which helped the Hope Harvester annihilate them in the shooting phase. In combat, my Minotaurs successfully wiped out that other Hope Harvester and then spun around to look like this. The Mongrels in the Blazing Glories actually managed to kill one of them, although they still lost combat, but stuck on their steadfast leadership and spun around to look at the other one. And here's what the board state looked like at the end of turn 5. Going into my turn 6 here, we can see that the Minotaurs charged the rear of that last Blazing Glory. They didn't spin to look at the Clawed Fiends and charge them instead, because I wasn't so sure the Mongrels were going to be able to pull this off on their own, especially without the banner anymore, and it turned out the Blazing Glory was more expensive than the unit of the Clawed Fiends anyway, and I didn't need to boot them off the objective because the Myrmidons were already holding the other one, and I didn't have any other scoring units within 6 inches to hold it at the end of the turn anyway. My magic was ineffectual and there wasn't any shooting to do, so we just went right to combat, where the Minotaurs promptly obliterated that last Blazing Glory, and spun around to look like this, and my opponent got his last turn in. He didn't make any charges this turn, and his shooting and magic didn't make anything panic, so this was just our ending board state here. A pretty bloody game, as you can see. My opponent got the points for both of my wizards. He got the points for all 3 raiding chariots. He also got the points for the Razor Tusk chariot, both units of gargoyles, the single Razor Tusk, and the unit of 6 Razor Tusks, as well as my giant Minotaur unit. From my opponent, I did not kill his single character, but I did get at least half points for the Lemures from core. I also killed the unit of Brazen Beasts, one of the Hope Harvesters, both of the Blazing Glories, and that 3-man unit of Flies. The final score ended up being 27-38 to 20-27. So it was a 12-8 before the objective, which my opponent handily captured, and went to a 15-5. As far as comments on the game as a whole go, I'd say that in general it was a pretty great game for both of us. Luck-wise, I had some really weird dice at some really important times, but ultimately I'd say they were pretty back and forth for both of us. Sure, I had crazy stuff like both of my wizards imploding, but at the same time I also had Mongrels straight up kill a Blazing Glory, which, when does that ever happen? I also got pretty lucky with some of my discipline tests, even though it kind of balanced out with me being not so lucky with some of the charges. I think what hurt me most, and what really led to my defeat in this game more than anything else, was my horrible deployment. Having my Minotaurs on the far left there, since I had mostly plopped, was a huge mistake, and I really need to keep them closer to the center from now on, especially in objective scenarios like this one. Finally, I'd like to thank Mike for the great game, and I'd like to thank everyone for watching. We'll see you next time.